Kristen Blower, or actually now Baroness Blower, thank you very much for joining us today. The former leader of NUT, and actually now is NEU.
That's right.
So first I would like to congratulate you in your new position as a peer in House of Lords.
Thank you very much.
And wish you success.
Thank you. I was very pleased to have a letter from the K&K congratulating.
Brilliant. And I would like to start asking about general election coming up in UK on 12th of December. There are a lot of views that these general elections are under the shadow of Brexit, and despite all these other very important issues such as health issue, education, austerity, housing, do you think they are right?
Well, I think what's happened is that the Conservative Party is desperate for it to be about Brexit because they absolutely want to, quotes, get Brexit done. Although, frankly, Brexit won't be done by the end of January if it gets done by then at all. My own view is that the Labour Party, and I'm very active in the Labour Party, is trying very hard to make sure that it is about all of those things which we need as policies for the many, not the few. So that is health, social care, education, but primarily, of course, about climate justice and the Green New Deal. And, you know, everybody just has to look around and know that that's really important. And it is the Labour Party that's got an extremely good offer on that. But yes, inevitably, questions are being asked about Brexit all the time by lots of people.
Labour Party declared their manifest for the general election 2019, but still there are a lot of criticism about that Brexit policy, that Labour Party's Brexit policy is not very clear. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, I think it may not be very clear to journalists. I think it's very clear to anyone who has actually read it or talked to any Labour activist or just Labour voter who actually, you know, has read what's written down. And it's very clear. It is that when we get a Corbyn-led Labour government, we will attempt to renegotiate the deal that is on offer at the moment, because frankly, the deal is terrible. It's terrible. But we would attempt to renegotiate that, and Jeremy's commitment is to do that in 3 months. And my own view is that that's absolutely possible, because we would be trying to negotiate something that the European heads of state would probably be very pleased to offer. And that after that, there would be a referendum within the first 6 months, and the referendum would have 2 options. It would be the deal that has been negotiated by Jeremy Corbyn and his team, which would be a much better deal than what's on offer now. In other words, Brexit, but a soft Brexit, a Brexit that supports workers' jobs and that kind of thing, or Remain. So it's a simple choice. It's negotiate a better deal and then put that better deal plus, or, you know, instead, the option to remain to the country. And whichever the country decides, then Jeremy is committed to making sure that that is what happens. Now, frankly, I don't think that's very complicated. If you talk to people who think the Lib Dems have a clearer policy,
Just because they say just the rule.
well, they say revoke, but you will notice that in the later stages of this election campaign, they've stopped saying that. Because it's very, very, very unlikely, it's almost unimaginable, that there would be a majority in the new parliament simply to revoke Article 50. The effect of that would be to just say we were going to remain without checking back with the British people. Now, that means that we will have to do what the Liberal Democrats have been pressing for, which is have a people's vote. So that means that's exactly the same policy as the Labour Party policy, that there will have to be another referendum or a people's vote so that people have the choice between Remain on a better basis or leave. Now, I've spent, you know, quite some minutes explaining that, but I think it's very clear. I don't think it's complex at all. I think that journalists in this country, particularly the press that supports the Conservative Party, is very keen to say it's complicated when actually it isn't.
Okay. And we are not the supporter of conservative at all. Just want to clarify that. And we've been, like Britain has been discussing Brexit since 2016, and we are at the end of 2019. And this has affected negatively on British economy as well. So why this process been that much difficult?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons why it's been difficult, but the first is that actually the Leave campaign blatantly lied to people. So people thought that they were getting something, which actually Brexit is not about at all. All that, you will have seen it. They've been in court about how many millions of pounds a week we would have for the health service. So some people have actually been, over this period of time, changing their mind anyway. But importantly, because that in that first referendum in 2016, it was absolutely never made clear to the British public exactly what Brexit meant. And so throughout that whole period, people in the House of Commons in particular, but also in the House of Lords, have been trying to work their way through what does this mean, as well as, of course, in all the time when Theresa May was PM, Prime Minister, she was trying to negotiate the withdrawal agreement. And she had to do that from scratch because there wasn't a position that the British government and the British people had adopted before the referendum. Of course, David Cameron didn't think he was going to lose. David Cameron thought that Brexit would lose. Yeah. So, he took us into a referendum on a basis that, quite frankly, lots of my friends in Europe don't understand. They don't understand why there wasn't a requirement, for example, for a two-thirds majority vote, because, of course, as you know, it was 51-49, which is very close, in favour of Brexit, and why there wasn't a requirement for the turnout to be at a particular level. Because those countries that use a referenda a lot actually do have those requirements. So it's taken a long time because nobody knew what they were really getting. Theresa May had to go and try and negotiate something. And as you probably know, and maybe your viewers know, she then tried on a number of occasions to get her agreement to be agreed by the House of Commons. And it was never agreed. And in fact, there hasn't been in the last Parliament, so that overlapped Theresa May, but then also Boris Johnson, there has never been a majority in the House of Commons for any particular way forward. And in the end, we had to have a general election to try and get a new government so that we can move forward on this question, either by leaving on a better deal or by deciding to remain.
And a lot of people think the British government their reaction has been very invisible about the human rights violation in Turkey, and they think it is because of pro-Brexit, after Brexit, that they see Turkey as a new market in trade. Do you think that's why they've been very quiet? Well,
to be quite honest, I think over the past decade, I don't think the British government has been good on Turkey at all. And of course, there was a time when the British government tried to say Turkey is our friends because they're holding back all of these people who want to come from Syria. So Turkey is helping us with our immigration. It's not a position I take at all. But I think that it's not a country. Turkey is not a country on which the British government has focused serious attention to see how bad things are there for workers and for the minorities in Turkey. And it's astonishing to me that that a country like ours, which talks about having an ethical way of working, did not absolutely make huge waves about, for example, the maltreatment of all of the academics who signed the letter, whose only, I'm telling you this as if you didn't know, but whose only crime, so to speak, was to sign a letter saying they were in favour of peace. Now, the trade unions were very clear and very vocal about how unreasonable that was and unjust. The British government, not at all. I think if we'd had a Labour government, it would have been a very different proposition.
We have a large population, Kurdish population, living in UK from part of Kurdistan. and they are going to vote in election as well. Do you have a message for them?
Well, my message to everybody is to vote Labour, because I'm a Labour. I'm now a Labour parliamentarian now that I'm in the House of Lords, and I genuinely believe that voting Labour is the way to have a fairer, more just, more equal society, and that can only be helpful for everybody. I should just say that my first experience of the Kurdish community was this. When I first started teaching, so a very long time ago, I'd been teaching a little while, maybe 10 years, so into the early 80s. And we used to have children coming into school, you know. And at the time it was the ILEA, and we had a book about Turkish, you know, children's words in Turkish. And we would have lots of kids and we would give them out, you know, these books about Turkish. And then suddenly, one day, a child said to me very quietly, "I'm not Turkish, I'm Kurdish." And there's suddenly great realization, you know, that we were, and of course, having spent their lives being, you know, unable to proclaim that people were Kurdish. It was very brave of this child to say it to me. And then since then, I have seen lots of parents and children that I know on demonstrations with the Kurds in London. And so I offer you my 2 words of Kurdish. They are Rushbash. This is all I can say in Kurdish. I will eventually learn.
Baroness Bulova, thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.